Today, I'm going to show you how to use Aperture for video. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Victor Melcher. I like to create cinematic videos and teach what I learned every Tuesday. First off, Aperture is how open or closed down the blades inside your camera lens are. It's measured in f-stops like f2.8, f5.6. The lower the number, the wider the lens opens, which this does two things to your image. A lower aperture like f2.8, for example, will let in more light, so you'll notice your image gets brighter as you go down in f-stop. And it gives you a more shallow depth of field, which basically means blurry backgrounds. A higher number, like f16 for example, closes the blades down, which lets less light in, so your image will look darker and will have a deeper depth of field, which means less blurry background, so more of your image will be in focus. Now something else that affects that background blur is going to be your lens focal length. A longer focal length, like 70mm at f2.8, will give you more background blur, and a wider focal length, like 17mm at f2.8, will give you less background blur, even if the aperture stays the same. Once you start to hit 35 and 50mm, that's when you'll really start to be able to get a nice blurry background. Another factor that affects background blur is actually sensor size. For example, my DJI Osmo Pocket 3 has a fixed aperture of f1.8. However, it has a small 1-inch sensor. So when I compare it to my Sony FX3, which has a larger full frame sensor, even at f2.8, the background in my FX3 will probably still look more blurry. So a smaller sensor means less blurry background, even at wide open apertures, while a larger sensor will mean a blurrier background at those wide open apertures. Now, when it comes to what aperture you should shoot, this all depends on the story you're trying to tell and how you want your image to look. For shots where you want your subject to be the sole focus, you'll usually want something like an f1.8 to f2.8 to isolate your subject from the background. Or maybe a part of your story is showcasing the environment that your subject is in. So in that case, you could shoot anywhere between f5.6 to f11. And another thing about aperture is that lenses typically will look a bit softer when they are wide open, say at f2.8, which in my opinion, this is great for getting cinematic video because you don't want your footage to look overly sharpened and look too digital. The key to a cinematic look is getting a filmic look where you're still retaining detail, but there is a little bit of softness, especially around the corners. And depending on the project, I like to add effects to soften up my corners anyways, so I wouldn't stress too much about that, but if you want your footage to be as sharp as it can, you'll probably have the most sharpness shooting somewhere between f4 and f8. Now, one common mistake I see beginners do is they always choose to shoot wide open, meaning they're shooting at an f2.8 or lower, just because they're always trying to get this blurry cinematic background. However, you should use aperture as a tool to tell your story and enhance your shot. Maybe you're traveling in a unique environment and you really want to showcase where your subject is at. So as you're choosing your aperture for each shot, think of what you want the focus to be. Now, if you want to get that blurry background in bright lighting conditions, you might notice when you drop your f-stop down to something like a f2.8, your footage will look super overexposed. So in this situation, you'll need a variable ND filter, and this is basically like sunglasses for your lens, and you can rotate the front element to make your image brighter or darker until you set proper exposure. In super harsh daylight, I use the Freewell 3 to 7 stop hybrid VND/CPL, and in less harsh lighting, like maybe the end of day or early morning, I'll use my Freewell 2 to 5 stop threaded VND filter. So a simple way to remember and understand aperture is low f-stop equals brighter image and blurry background. High f-stop equals darker image and less blurry background. Hopefully this video helps you understand aperture a bit more, and if you do have any questions, let me know in the comments down below. Huge thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more tutorials, and I'll see you next time. Peace.